It is 12:06 on July 12th, 2018. And we have a quorum, so it's time for pledges.
Thank you for standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
So our first item is welcome Ms. Wright, Angela Wright, our new Longview parent member, and we're going to swear her in as our new member.
All right, if you can stand up, because she's going to read this first.
I, Angela Wright, do solemnly swear that I have not directly or indirectly paid, offered, promised to pay, contributed, or promised to contribute any money or thing of value, or promised any public office or employment for the giving or withholding of a vote at the election at which I was elected, or as a reward to secure my appointment or confirmation, whichever the case may be, so help me God. Title of position, to which elected, UT Tyler Innovation Academy Board member. Continue.
No? That's it. Okay. On the next one. Oh, now let's read the next one.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, Angela Wright, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of UT Tyler Innovation Academy Board member of the state of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
All right, thank you. Have a seat and sign them. And we'll...
Welcome to the board. Thank you. We're good? Okay. So while you sign that, we're going to move on.
Miss Rod, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? And again, welcome, and we're very excited to have you serve on the board and appreciate you taking this position.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be a part of the board. Innovation Academy in Longview has been a wonderful thing for my family. I have boys that are twins going into the 6th grade and a daughter going into 4th grade. And I have been impressed under the direction of Rachel Hawkins. It has been a wonderful transition from traditional public schools. I've been just thrilled with the philosophy behind the school and interested in learning more about it, wanted to devote time in understanding it even more. Would like to preserve charter schools as an option for my children and the future of their education. So I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
So we're going to move to our action items, and we have 4 items on the agenda. The first one is the minutes from our May 10th meeting. We received those via email. Any questions, any comments about the minutes? We don't have any questions. We have a motion to approve the minutes of our May 10th meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Danny. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The next item is to request approval to submit a non-expansion request for district and campus name change.
So as the board is aware, at our last meeting, we had Lucas Roebuck present and talk to us about a name change and talked a little bit about the rebranding of the university. Since that, we have met with all 3 of the design teams on each campus. During that time, he met with them as well to give them an overview. And the president has approved the name change, and so the next step is for us to get approval from the board for a non-expansion amendment, and then once we get approval from the board, we will then submit to TEA. We're hoping to submit to TEA this afternoon the non-expansion amendment. We've already been in contact with TEA, so TEA is aware this amendment is coming, and the importance of trying to get the name change done as quickly and as possible. Once the name change is official, the university will release a press release to all the parents and all three of the communities, informing them of the name change. We already have the logo for the new name change, so the directors, as they're updating documents and things right now, they're going ahead and adding the new name change to those documents. We are working on printing business cards. The university is funding that, as well as there will be signage change as soon as the name is changed. So there'll be signage change here on Ullman and on the building here in Tyler, and then signage change in Longview. Palestine will be pending once the facility is complete, and they'll put the new signage there as well. So that's kind of the timeline. The sooner the better, especially as we transition into this new year. We all know that if we can kick off the year with utilizing that new name change, it's going to be a lot easier. So the new name change will be the University of Texas at Tyler, University Academy at Tyler, and then the University of Texas at Tyler, University Academy at Palestine, and then the University of Texas at Tyler, University Academy at Longview. And so we will present all of that information to TEA, hoping for approval. So I'm asking the board to approve the non-expansion amendment with the new name change.
We have any questions?
Not that it will affect anything. I'm just curious, has the board, through constituents or other parents, received any negative or positive, anything feedback wise about the name change? I hate it. I like it. It's a good idea.
I really don't know that the information has been out there as much, other than the design team's meeting and getting that information. It's been pretty close.
Okay.
You know, the truth of it is, we didn't get a lot of negative feedback, in fact, any from the design teams. And so we didn't feel like there was a need to probably send out a survey, because I think that would just open up. And then, you know, sometimes I think surveys, there's good and bad. The good is you're surveying people. The bad is you're not going to be able to make everybody happy.
Right.
And so, you know, if we know the name is going to be changed, and we know there's really not that many options when you look at it, when you know you have to have the University of Texas at Tyler, and you have to have at Tyler, at Palestine, at Longview, you're left with very few options.
Sure.
And if you're talking about wanting to better align it, the purpose of the rebranding was better to align it with the word university. The point we're making is that we're often referred as Innovation Academy. And so this would allow us to be referenced as University Academy, which that is the purpose of the charter, is to be tied to the university. So
I will say the official name is actually truncated to UT Tyler, not the whole lengthy.
UT Tyler?
Yes,
UT
it's
Tyler
truncated to
Innovation
UT Tyler.
So you
Like, look at the document behind
So
it.
technically, it will be UT Tyler University Academy.
Just as
so they're not even putting University of Texas.
they're not putting the
Okay.
University of Texas
Okay,
at Tyler
I'm
first.
sorry, that was not my understanding.
My understanding of the law is it has to actually have the official name of the university.
Yeah,
Ours now does not.
Okay, but I'm just, so somebody might actually catch it this time, just FYI.
When I talked to Joanne at the Charter Association, she said UT Tyler.
Okay.
And because it's currently
that
UT
might be where
Tyler.
I got it too. I thought that they
I
said
think
that
in
you
the
had to
charter
say-
itself, it refers to as the holder as the University of Texas at Tyler, but our official name
The
is
holder
UT
is the
Tyler.
regents of the system.
But it says the University of Texas at Tyler, but in our official name for the campus and the district, it's UT Tyler, and that was already approved.
Well, that's easier for me to say then. UT
Right,
Tyler.
that's what I'm saying. It is
I'm good
truncated, so
with
it's
that.
not like you're having to, yeah.
Because I was trying to keep a straight face there.
Yeah, Joanne at the Charter Division said that it needed to say UT Tyler as it does now, UT
Okay.
Tyler. So I think it will be approved with that.
Good. And as soon as, again, it's official, the university will work to get a press release out to parents.
Any other questions? So, do we have a motion to approve the amendment request?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Kenner. Do we have a second? Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
I made sure there was a quorum.
Yes,
It was symbolic.
So 5-1. It passes. Okay, our next item is
That answer your question?
17-18 budget amendment.
Yes, it does.
Okay, on this amendment, we are accepting a little bit of an increase in some federal revenue, and then we have some money donated as well to local funds. And then also we wanted to take some money from the rollover. We're budgeting about $168,000 rollover. We wanted to take some money from that rollover of this fiscal year and use it this year for some maintenance projects. So we are taking $54,000 from that and expensing out as maintenance, some maintenance projects that we have. And then the other amendments are just moving money around in areas that we have the expense budgeted, it just was in the wrong function.
Any questions? So is this the last amendment for?
This is the
Last
last
one
amendment
for
for
that.
the year.
We don't have any questions? Do we have a motion?
I move.
Thank you, Dr. McGinnis. You have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? I'm sorry, who was the first?
McGinnis.
Thank you.
It's rare, so. You
What's his name? And second was Henry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is the 18-19 budget adoption.
Well, go ahead and then I'll fill in from there. I guess I'll start. So as we are preparing, we're looking at, this is the proposed 18-19 budget. As you can see, we have a side-by-side comparison so that you can look at 17-18 and now our proposed 18-19 budget. When preparing the 18-19 budget or preparing the proposed budget, you have to kind of estimate your student enrollment. So we're estimating it at 750, even though we have a little over 780 something confirmed right now. But as you know, you always leave a little bit of, your goal is that you're going to be over, but oftentimes in the past we've been under. So we built it off of 750 at a 96% attendance rate. And you can see that our state revenue will increase as we have additional students. So we will bring in more state revenue, likely more federal revenue with more students. That number will likely go up because of looking at those are your SPED students and students you get additional funding for. Well, we don't really know how some of the students that we're getting will actually be classified. So there's likelihood that that number only increases. And with CTE and things like that that we're putting in place this year, the work study program, there's funding tied to that. So we really, we weighed on the side of caution when we made the budget. So when we looked at those things, we said, okay, we had this many special ed students, so we brought over that same number, even though we know that number will likely go up.
On that revenue section,
that
on the
breakdown.
document that you have, that line that's the smaller font up there, the revenue from 16-17 fund balance 200.
Okay, yeah.
We added that into this document to show you that the 6,541,000 is including 200 that's coming from a fund balance. So our projected revenue for the fiscal year is not 6,541. It's actually 6,341.
That's right, and that we'll talk about the $200,000. That's to cover the facilities. So we'll talk about the facilities payout and how we're gonna look at that. So as you know, that when you increase students, you increase your instructional costs, you increase staff costs, and things like that. So a lot of these things are basically very similar to last year, give or take. You can see some things that have actually gone down a little bit and some things that have increased. Mostly things have increased. The one area that you're going to see the biggest increases is on our facilities payment. So in the past, we've paid $250,000 every year on the facility. Can you go down to the facility payoff sheet?
Yes.
All right, so I've been working with the university to develop a plan to pay the facility in Palestine. As you know, the projected amount for the cost of the facility is $1.6 million. And so what we're looking at, this year we paid $250,000 to the university. So we paid, even though we paid it up front, we paid in September. They paid for the company. They pay it at like every quarter or every monthly. But that money is paid from our account to the university in September. So they hold that money and they make our payments for us. So as you can see here, we made our payments. This is the payment for the Longview facility. So those payments were made around $250,000 is what we paid. Going into the 18-19 school year, this will be the time option for us to not only make our payment, but also pay off the Longview facility. And so we are working with the company. So next year, our payment will increase to $457,569. And what that will do is that will allow us to make our payment for that rent on that facility. As you know, we're renting it, but then we will make an additional payment next year, which will be the payment to purchase the facility. So the facility at the end of the 2019 school year will be owned by the university, the facility in Longview. It will be debt-free. So going into the 19-20 school year, we will continue that same amount, in fact, a little less, of $400,000. So over the course of the next 4 years, we will pay for the amount of the projected cost of the Palestine facility is $1.6 million. And so $400,000 will be paid to the university in September at the beginning of each fiscal school year to then pay out our debt, which the university will acquire starting this school year, because they will actually begin constructing the facility and finish it this 18-19 or this coming 18-19 school year, hopefully at the end of the 18 or beginning of the 19, that it will be finished. So then they will actually, won't be a lease to purchase, it will actually be a purchase. So they will purchase the facility up front, then we will then pay them out over a course of 4 years when you're looking at the Palestine facility. So when you're looking at the 2020-24 school year, that's when we will have the $400,000. That will be another opportunity for us to look at something regarding facilities. So when you talk about building the budget this year or going into the 18-19 school year, as you can see, it's just like if you were looking at your cost at home, our mortgage went up. And so when your mortgage goes up, you have to cut back. And so we have had to look at ways that we could cut back and to meet budget. And so some things that we have looked at is cutting cost of travel. So that means cost of teachers presenting at conferences, teachers participating at conferences. That's looking at also instructional costs, really asking ourselves if there's specific programs that we are no longer going to be able to support. Looking at also in the event that we're going to have a student competition, that competition, we're going to have to know up front how much it's going to cost for the students to compete in that competition. Are the students going to pay for part of the competition? Are they going to do fundraisers? Looking very specifically at dual credit cost. And so that's one thing that we've been meeting on today, looking at the cost of the actual dual credit, the cost of textbooks. I've been working with the university to say, is there any way that we can get some consistency with the use of textbooks? We're also looking at, in the past, we had to bus our students over on Friday. There was a cost associated with that. My goal is that we are going to get word, hopefully as early as Friday, that we're no longer going to have to bus our students over on Fridays. We're hoping to have some type of relationship where our students receive services on the campus, and so that's going to allow us to put some money back into the budget that we have budgeted for right now. So when we look at the budget, for example, we budgeted for buses to bring students over every Friday. If that cost goes away, then we'll be able to add that back in as a positive to the budget. We did not have to cut any staffing. We did not have to make any cuts with, trying to think of anything specifically that we really talked about as far as cuts. The biggest cuts that we've made, so there is as you know, the university approves a merit. We don't actually get a merit pool. We have to fund our own merit. So in the event that is a raise, so in the event that the university awards raises, we have to budget that as well. So we have that budgeted in there in the event that raises are awarded. So we're able to keep all the staff. We're able to budget raises. We were able to not have to pull, as you know, original conversations. We were going to have to pull around $300,000 or $400,000 out of our fund balance, and you'll see that we no longer have to do that, which is a big help. Because if we were going to have to pull $300,000 out of our fund balance, then turn around and pull another $200,000 or $300,000 out of our fund balance, it was going to deplete our fund balance. So going back to the conversation of this $200,000, we are for these 18-19 school year pulling $200,000 out of our fund balance to pay for the facility. In order to kind of to make it work, but that also leaves us with, I think it's $100,000.
That 98.8.
It's here. The 98,000 is where we are basically in the positive with this budget. So we just wanted to play it safe. We could have said, okay, we're not going to pull anything out of our fund balance, and we're just going to do the very best we can to make it. But that's not fair. We've got the money in the fund balance for a reason. And so we said, you know, we're used to making a $250,000 payment. And so let's bring some of the money from the fund balance so that we can offset some costs and be able to support the needs of the campuses. But this transportation cost, that could easily decrease. There were some other things that we talked about that could easily decrease as we go throughout the year. But then other things could increase. The key is this is built off the 750 students. If we see that increases, then we're going to have to start asking ourselves, where do we cut in some other areas as well.
One of the key, if you notice on the instruction, it went up so much, is we added sections. And by adding sections, you're talking more devices and everything. It's not just a teacher, it's devices, and a big portion of that's technology.
And when you, in this budget, when you think about 18-19 school year, you actually have to think about through the start of the 19-20 school year. So in this budget, we have budgeted to start a K1, K first, second in Palestine, if that's approved. So we have to think ahead to say, okay, if we get a permission, let's say the building's built in the 19 school year, everybody's in the building, but then we get ready to bring in the 19-20 school year, if we get permission to have K1, 2, then knowing that, we're going to have to fund those classrooms with materials and things like that. So all of that has to be built in the budget. Just like Crowder was talking, we added, how many sections in Tyler?
We have 2 kindergarten, 2 4th grade, 2 6th.
So how many sections did you add though from last year?
It's like 4.
Like 4. I was thinking 4,
like 4
but
or
I was afraid I was going to get it wrong. So you know, when you add 4 sections, that's for teachers, that's for classrooms to you know, that's material to support those classrooms, technology to support. The biggest cost is the personnel and the technology. And when you look at a budget, the biggest cost we have is personnel, technology, and then dual credit for us.
Yeah, you see an increase in your revenue because you're adding the more kids, but that first year you don't see really a return on investment because of the fact that you're putting so much into just getting it going. Really, it's year 2 after they have their technology that you really start seeing.
Shayna, where is the facilities?
It is 51.
It's an operation.
No, the facilities income.
Oh,
Income,
it's in that
is it
state
in the-
revenue.
the
It's
state?
it's
Okay.
in the state revenue.
So this year, we get a facilities allotment, and we're looking at, I think we budgeted 150, but we even think that could be increased as well.
The estimate's roughly 160,
Yeah.
but we put 150
Yeah.
to be on the conservative side. There's kind of a question whether how that's going to look in terms of like your ADA funding. They're literally looking at attendance every single day, right, for every single student. Where from what I originally heard on the facilities is it was going to be a flat rate per student on your snapshot. Now the most recent email that came out makes it sound like it is more tied to attendance. So if it is tied to attendance, you're talking about so much money per day for every kid that's actually on campus versus looking at your snapshot and saying you have 750 kids, here's 200 and something dollars per kid. That was the way it was originally kind of worded. And so we thought that, you know, we would be safe that on snapshot we would get this number and you're going to get this amount, but it really does look like it might be more tied to ADA. The commissioner still has not released the final wording on that yet, so we're waiting to see for sure, but we did the 150 as conservative.
And I want to clarify, because I think I said something about programming. We did not cut any programs. Am I wrong? Because I think I mentioned programs. We discussed were there programs that did not align with currently taking place on the campuses that did not align, and we needed to revisit. And after looking at that, we did not see a need to cut any program. I think we just have to do a better job of ensuring that our resources are tied directly to the purpose of the charter school.
It's like a real big cut in staff development, curriculum development. What is it? What is that specifically?
Go ahead.
Okay, there were some positions in that function that were moved to other functions that for the people that originally were in there this year have different duties now, so they were moved to other functions. So overall, it didn't really cut the budget, but it did decrease that function.
Okay.
So like a person who was coaching that's now teaching or vice versa.
Was moved to like 11 or 21 or whatever function.
So the person's position is still there, it just moved into a different function.
But we also did, though, cut curriculum's budget.
We did, but most of that's curriculum supplies, which is budgeted under 11, because that's
Yeah.
all instruction
Yeah,
stuff.
so that was the area that we cut.
So you're saying most of the difference there is made up in other places?
Yes.
As far as salaries and things of that nature, were
Yes.
those, nothing was cut there?
No,
Okay.
no.
There were some positions that went half-time, but that did cut the budget a little bit, but not a huge.
Gotcha.
So, trying to think of different things, scenarios here. The biggest thing was we cut travel. And I mean, I'm not proud of that, but I think what we've agreed to is that as we see, if we are able to alleviate some of the cost of transportation and some of the cost of, again, we feel like we're coming in the school year and we're in October and we feel like our number's pretty stable. We can then identify the additional federal revenue that we may get through CTE funding and SPED. We may be in a better position to say, okay, so if we were able to travel, what would be our 3 or 4 different places or 3 or 4 different conferences that we'd like to send teachers to? But when we began to look at the cost and making additional cuts, we had to say, okay, what would be the cut that we would make that no one would be able to see any difference if they were here last year, other than that only maybe we would know internally, not a student, not a teacher. And I think, that we looked at, travel. Another thing we're trying to do is we're trying to do a better job of monitoring our students who are taking dual credit. Dual credit, we have budgeted around $250,000 in the budget to pay dual credit costs. That is costs associated with the courses as well as textbooks. We are finding that we have students that are enrolled in dual credits that continue to not be successful in dual credits, but we continue to enroll them in dual credits. And that's really not in the best interest. It's not in the best interest of anyone. That student, it's definitely not in the best interest of us to keep paying for them to be in dual credits $300 a course when we know they're not, they were
Right.
successful last semester. What tells us that they're going to be successful next semester? So we actually met today. We developed an agreement that will be presented to parents and students. And in the agreement, it says that if the student fails a semester of dual credit, they have to sit out the next semester. So we will not, as a district, continue to fund students that are just continuing to not be successful in these courses. We also talked about if the student is not passing all their classes, they will not be enrolled in dual credit. Right now, we have students that can pass TSI, but they're failing 2 or 3 classes, and the teacher is even saying they're not ready for dual credit. They're not even passing my course. I'm telling you right now, the chances of them passing dual credit course is very unlikely. That I'm holding their hand and they're still not passing it, but we still go ahead and enroll them because, again, that's our model. And so we revisited our model and said, okay, we want to continue to offer dual credit. I mean, that is who we are. But is it in the best interest of the student to force them to take a dual credit course when they repeatedly show us, one, they can't even handle their coursework right now, or they failed the dual credit course? So that will just save us money in the long run. And then looking at TSI testing, we pay for students to continue to take the TSI test. That test can cost from a range of $35 to $50 or plus. We're saying we're going to pay for it twice. And then after we pay for it twice, and if they continue to need to take the test, then they're going to have to pay for it on their own. I'm also working with the university to look at textbooks and the costs associated with that, and trying for them to be a little more consistent with the use of textbooks. In the event that takes place, that's going to save us money as well. So we are looking at ways to revisit to say, we want to stay true to our model, but how do we do it in a more fiscally responsible way? Any other questions?
Just a quick one on
Yes, please.
on 35. That's a over $20,000 cut in the food services. I'm just curious, like here in Tyler, we're jumping so big, you would think it would go up.
Well, first of all, our food service, our participation has always been really low. Palestine dropped significantly because of the facilities situation there. Going from their own building to now the Mathis Hall building, participation dropped substantially. So the income coming in and the expense of the food that was being purchased for that obviously decreased. So, and since they are our largest campus of the economically disadvantaged who are getting the free and reduced programming, we're not really, since they're not buying, or since they're not coming and eating it, we're not buying the food. But then of course, since they're not coming and getting it, we're also not getting the revenue either. As far as Tyler, we thought this year we would see an increase in participation with the younger students, and really we haven't. They just don't, it's a grab and go prepackaged breakfast,
anyway,
right?
So,
So what we found was that we budgeted a lot of money for purchasing food last year or this current year, and we just didn't use it. So rather than budget it for no reason, we dropped that.
yeah, makes sense.
And you'll see on the local revenue, that 3,000, notice it went from 87.50 to 3,000. Part of that is that's your money that's coming in for kids who are paying for breakfast. When they pay money to their account, that's where it goes, is in that local revenue line. And since we really aren't getting the participation and the money's not really coming in there, we are projecting a lot lower revenue in that category as well.
Any other questions?
I was just curious about the facility's income, and the amount. What does that mean?
So it said for the very first time, charters will receive a facilities allotment. This is the first time ever, and it's based on a per student. And it will be funding that you can utilize to enhance your facility or maintain it. You can use it to build add to your building.
And that comes from the state.
Yes.
They allotted $60 million, I think it was, or
Per student is what,
It's supposedly supposed to be like 200 and something.
So they raised it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a little over $200.
It's not enough to build anything.
Yeah.
Just, but
Yeah.
it's something.
It's helping us.
We'll
a
take
little, yeah.
You gotta-
We'll take it.
We'll take it.
We'll take the 100 and
The
we
argument-
did an increase in, per student.
Yes, there was a little bit of increase in just the FSP payments in
Yeah.
general. But the argument behind the facilities payments is ISDs get property tax dollars and charters don't. So the argument was made that the state should fund some sort of facilities payments since we don't get property tax dollars to help with
And I
facilities.
can tell you the traditional ICs are not very happy with that.
Because now the door's open.
Yeah.
So it's only gonna go up.
So we're excited about that. Any other questions?
If we don't have any questions, do we have a motion to approve the budget for the 18-19 school year?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item, actually, those are the action items. So now we move to the information
I
items.
was going there. Financial updates, any additional information on that? Okay. Other than-
Those are the numbers. I didn't decrease this yet because y'all just approved the amendment. So the next report that you'll see the change and this rollover and that kind of stuff.
So the current fund balance is,
This is the fund balance, not including that, but if you add it to that, which it's gonna be 54 less as far as budgeted is
So
expenses.
6 something.
all right, I'm trying to see
And
how
we
that-
are projected to get more revenue than, our payments are not finished yet. We're still getting revenue payments. So even though our expenses is more than our revenue at the moment, we are expecting a good, like almost another $1 million in revenue.
Yes.
So it will, just so
We'll
y'all
balance
know.
out by the end of the year.
Yes, so right now, yes, we are upside down, it looks like, because our expenses outweigh our revenue, but we do have payments still scheduled all the way through September.
All right, so projected enrollment, just wanted to update the board on that. So as you know, Tyler will have K through 12th grade. We will have our first graduating class next year, the 18-19 school year, class of 19. So Tyler will have 338 students, or projected to have 338 students. Longview will have a first through 12th grade, and they're projected to have 266 students. And Palestine will serve 3rd through 12th grade with a total of 180 students, with a total of 784 students for the district. So we're building the budget off of 750. But one thing to note as we talk about budget, I truly believe that these are some of the smallest numbers are here. I think this is going to be some of the smallest numbers that you see. I think you start looking here, this graduating class is only going to go up. I think this will be one of the smallest graduating classes that we have. And then knowing that, that's just going to be more students in dual credit. So the cost is for the cost associated with dual credit, to provide that dual credit to students is, it really is a big budget item. And we don't get we pay the same cost as any other institution. And what's interesting, a lot of times our parents think that the dual credit is free because we're associated with the university. So they think that we don't pay anything. And so why are we making a big deal out of their kid not passing? Well, 2 reasons. It's going against their transcript. The kid's not being successful, and that's our charge, is to support the student academically. And then the other reason, it's costing us money. It's just like, mom and dad are not real happy when their child fails college because they didn't get anything out of that money that they spent. So, but we're real excited about the enrollment. As you can see, we have wait lists on several of the campuses and several of the grades. Most of the campuses are at capacity, other than when you're looking at those senior level classes. Most, it would be very difficult to transfer in here and as a senior. And it's just not likely. But if you look at the Ks on both campuses and the younger grades, I mean, they're at capacity with wait lists. So really exciting. Any other questions? What's next on my list? So facilities, I've already provided you an update on. So let me kind of walk through. We talked about the cost of facilities associated with Palestine. To give you an update on Palestine, as you know, we are moving forward with the modulars. They're on the Mathis Hall. It's my understanding they're going to be, if you're walking in there to the left, so they're right across from the main entrance of Mathis Hall, several hundred feet, up to like 150, 200 feet from the entrance of Mathis Hall. We will be utilizing the two structures that are currently on Mathis Hall, the modulars, and then they will be bringing in a modular facility as well. And so they're working on kind of the gut of that modular right now, the design of it, bathrooms, classrooms, offices, and from there they're planning to move forward with construction. So everything's still in place, it's still on go. The goal is to kind of finalize the layout. Once that's finalized, then they will then come in and start clearing the area and begin to develop the pad. And it'll move pretty quickly after that. I mean, all they'll have to do is place the modular there. So things that we've talked about is, looking at fencing around the modular, and then I know we've met at one point with the Development Council talking about a brick frontage that would tie in and look real nicely with the facility there at Mathis Hall. We, in fact, yesterday, Dr. Sherman and I met about sending something out to parents as an update in the community, but we didn't feel like we were in a position to provide them any more specific information other than what we've already provided them. So we're hoping that they're going to break ground pretty quickly so that we can get the ball rolling, basically.
How long do they think they'll take?
They are projecting that they're hoping that we're going to be able to move in and occupy the building sometime in January. But they set the timeline as far as that we would be in Mathis Hall the rest of the year, the whole year, and we would move over the summer, so a year from the summer.
Did they hire a design firm, or who's doing the design?
They're working with Andy Krause, or I'm working with Andy Krause, and he's working with someone through the companies to look at a layout. Ms. Rutledge has provided several wish list items and layouts. She's quite the architect, and it's all associated with cost. This is the cost, and we have to stay within that cost. And when you have a budget, you have barriers. And when that's just it's there's somewhere. I mean, if you don't have a budget, you don't have barriers. You can tell me to build a house without a budget, then I don't have any barriers. I'm going to build a house. If you tell me I've got barriers, then I'm going to have to begin to pick and choose. So anyway, so that all goes down to when we look at the budget, trying to make sure that we stay within that budget. But also meet the needs of everything, and that's the challenge that we're having. Here in Tyler, we're looking at adding. You did see the parking lot got fixed.
Yes.
So we're excited about that. The Innovation Academy or University Academy funded that. So we're also looking at.
Been broken for 20 years.
We're also looking at adding a porch. And so the porch will be to secure safety for students so they don't have to walk in the main parking lot, so they can connect the portables over to the side. It'll connect them so that the students can access the building through the side, back, or not through the front. Those are the two main constructions things that I can think of here in Tyler. And then we have, the campuses are currently being cleaned and prepared for students to return and things like that. Little small maintenance, but big ticket items right now with facilities. Every classroom here in Tyler will be utilized. And so that goes back to all board meetings will be held here. Prior to the board meeting, we'll have the leadership meeting here. So I apologize for the time constraints. Any questions regarding facilities? All right, STAR data. Weaver, you want to go into that?
You had a handout. Hope you had time to look at it. I'm gonna update it here in just a minute. All the data is in from all the students taking all the different tests, but the state hasn't made their final calculations. They'll send out their report card A through F by August the 15th. Actually, we'll have a sneak preview on August the 7th.
For the district.
So we'll know some things internally, can look at some things, can start an appeal process if we see something wrong. But then August 15th, that will come out. The district will get a label of, an A through F. The campuses will not this year. They'll grade it on just basically a pass-fail system, like Met standard or not. We'll do our own internal calculations to see, well, were they an A or B, whatever. Just to go out on a limb really right now, because nobody's knows how to do the calculations and all the formulas exactly yet, but it looks to me like we're going to be sitting at a B. Now, to a lot of districts, of course, this year it's very norm referenced. So in other words, there's only going to be 10% A's and 15% B's and bulk C's and so on and so forth. But so a lot of people would be proud to just pass this year. But I think our B will be like around an 88. They are going to translate everything into more meaningful numbers to the public. Like it starts off with 60s and 30s and all that, but all those things are going to translate into a typical ABC scale, like an 88 is like you think of in school. So I think we're at about an 88. That comprises two parts. Part of it's 70%, part of it's 30%. And we'll talk more about that when the real results come out. So, but I would like to address an issue today, if I can, with the data that we have. I would like to ask a couple questions to you. Do you think that it is acceptable that there would be a difference of performance between economically disadvantaged students and non-economically disadvantaged students? Is it acceptable that there would be a difference of performance in how they do math and how they do science and how they do?
No.
Okay.
I think that there's going to
There's
be
going to be,
there's
but
going
no.
to be one, but the goal should be to reduce or eliminate it. Right?
Okay.
I mean, that would be the philosophy.
Okay. So my second question was, if so, how much of a gap would be acceptable? Like 5%, 10%, 20%?
None.
None, you're saying? If so,
Whatever the state says.
what about this? What if it was graduated? What if you accepted that ECD is a factor? A student is economically disadvantaged. He fills out a form. It means he has a salary that puts him on free or reduced meals associated with other resources that may not be there. That often that student's coming into kindergarten without the same experiences and things. So maybe it's true that when you first test them in third grade, there's a something gap. But could I propose that by the time you get them as a school function to 8th grade to 10th grade, that gap now will be 0? If you're not just sitting to the side and going, oh, I have ECD kids, they do bad. If you say, I'm going to do something about it, it may start with a gap, but that gap should close. Would you agree with that?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay, theoretically. Well, that sounds like you're backing off your enthusiasm.
I'm not backing off.
I see. Okay.
I just know what the numbers end up being.
I see what you're saying. You know the answer at the back of the book, at least so far. Are there people that are making a difference here? Are we making a difference? With that in mind, you can, rather than look at the original graph that I gave you, I want you to take a look at this graph again. It's just been updated a little bit, if you might mind handing those out to this side. Let me keep 2 of those. Thanks so much.
Yes.
We're going to look at the side with the boxes on it. Would you flip to that one, Christian?
Box plots. Oh my God.
I'm gonna move. She's gonna get that as big as possible. I'm gonna move over here so I can make references that might make sense to you. I just want you to kind of look at this for a second. I understand there's a lot of information here, but I just want a bit of a takeaway, and then I want you to take it with you and drill into it some more if you're interested. It allows for an initial look and then deeper digging, both the front and back of this. If you just look at the boxes up here, all of this style of box, this open type of gray black box with the gray bar in the middle, that represents the state's performance this year, and that is their gap, the gap that I was just talking to you about. The top of it, because it is typically the case, is how the non-economically disadvantaged student scores. That's the average of all of the non-economically disadvantaged students. The bottom bar of that box is how does the ECD kids do on that same test in that same subject. And this is this is all the reading grades, the writing, the ELA, the math, the science, and the social studies, everything's spelled out here. Now, what is the gap at the state? According to my question, should there be a gap? Is it acceptable to have a gap in performance between economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged kids? Look at this thing. Here's third graders. I know this isn't longitudinal data, but it comes out this way every year, so it might as well be. There's more than a 20% difference. So if you're an ECD kid, you are almost locked in like a label into this lower performance, which is so low that it's locking you out of a lot of opportunities. So what about our second proposition that maybe over time, and again, this isn't longitudinal, but this is how it is every single year, 10th grade, if you start looking over this thing, some of these 10th grade scores, all of them are 20% gaps. You get them with a 20% gap, stay at a 20% gap. Get them, label them, stamp them, keep them there forever. And use the excuse because that's just the way it is. Now, all that's reported in the news ever is the gray box, the average. It's a little low inside of the box because the state is 60% economically disadvantaged. It is the challenge educationally, is meeting the needs of ECD kids. Now, the state has a huge challenge on its hands to do this across the state, and they have this goal of 60 by 30. Well, they've already met that goal for non-ECD kids. The top of these things, the top of these boxes, all those state boxes, non-ECD kids have already met the 2030 goal. They're there. They're college ready. All the opportunities are ahead of them. It always has been. It's been that way. The challenge is, and 20 whole points below them is this group down here. Sometimes as low in this fourth grade writing. It's a challenge for everyone, we'll find out. So there's a couple reasons I put the graph in this way. It's a lot of information, but hopefully the picture says some things. First of all, you see the gaps. Our gaps as a district are in those red boxes, the skinny boxes inside of that open box. You see where sometimes ours is very skinny, but sometimes it's very, or I should say, it's tall or long, or the gap. Now we have a little, don't want to hide behind anything. When you deal with small numbers, sometimes that can jump up and down based on a few students. That shouldn't matter. We have the same challenge. I don't want to be as transparent as possible about how do we meet the needs, not have this gap. At the bottom of the page, I wrote a few things. It's one of our goals to outperform the state averages for non-ECD and ECD students and close the gap between the two. Would we agree with that? 2, I want to point out that the first graph on the far left depicts that the district in the aggregate, that's the added of all of this together, is currently meeting the non-economically disadvantaged goal, exceeding the economically disadvantaged goal, and has narrowed the gap more than the state. To be clear, that's this first box right here. This is a summative box of all of this information. This is the one they give you the grade on. That's how the state looks for all subjects. That's us inside of it. And I also added that just as campuses, Longview was way up here, Palestine was right here, and Tyler was right there. Does that make sense to you? I could have provided that for every subject, and as we move into that in our workshops and in our campuses, we will be using this same instrument to look at things.
And the demographics at each school are different.
That's right. So as you see, we're 24% as a district, but Palestine is 33%, right? And I think the other two are around 21% each. Right. So there's a bit of a gap there. I also want you to see that all tests aren't created equal.
Yeah.
You know,
Fourth grader, I
when you look at U.S., I'm going to reach over your Christian if that's okay. U.S. history is this last one. In fact, I'd like you to look at this last section right here. We'd like our school to operate that way in every subject, every grade level, I think. Because in 8th grade, we outperform the state. The bottom is higher than the bottom. The average is higher than the average. The top is higher than the top significantly. We want it to be that way. And then in that subject, it even stretches it further. Now, at first, you get this result back in the mail and you go, oh, that's fantastic. Look at that, 85, all compared to all those other scores. But when you see how the state did, that's also where they did the best. That's the reason another reason I put that box there. You can't get too excited about that because the state also knocks that one out. But then back up again, you can't be excited that you've gotten even further. You've done even better. So you've moved in a subject and you've moved forward. The reason this has this aqua color here, a very strange thing happened on our data. A few of those aqua boxes right there. Our data was totally inverted from what it normally is in any sizable population. The ECD kids scored higher than the non-ECD kids in each of those situations.
Wow.
So some of you are nodding and you're noticing the relevance of that in the question again. You know, should we do something about it? Are we doing something about it? Does it have to be there? So that's a weird gap. That gap is the other direction. That's probably more like it. It's more like an atmosphere that's treating all kids the same with a strong instructional model that all kids have this kind of random equal opportunity. And then beyond that, the assistance and that's given there in instructional interventions. But we do have some areas that are problems also. We've noted that we score low in 4th grade writing. We do also notice that the state scores low in 4th grade writing, and we intelligently, we take that into account. We don't beat ourselves up because it's so much lower than U.S. history. So on and so forth. So I'll leave that with you. Let me ask you at this time, well, I did put this. Roughly speaking, this would be an A, B, C, and D. And you can see where we fall. They base it on the red. So we fall right up here. It's going to be close to an 88. The state's going to be at a C. Now this is actually a little bit off. Longview as a campus, if they would have just been a campus and been graded this year, very likely may have made a 91 or a 90, made an A on their own in the campus. Is there any chance some people could ask some questions to help?
I guess I'll ask. Tyler's low compared. Is it a demographic thing? Is it
partially?
What are the potential causes and ramifications?
Right. So,
or is it too early to say?
Well, they don't. So I'm going to defer a little bit. So I'm giving you the data that paints the picture, and then there's a whole department that does all that, figuring out exactly what do we do about it, why did it happen, and what do we do about it. But I would like you to look at one more thing because I know y'all were in a hurry today. Would you go ahead and turn it over on the back? I know this looks so crazy, but you can tell I am just pink. This is my best collection of so much data on one page. It is so awesome.
I don't think
Did you
the
bring your
font's small
magnifying
enough.
glasses?
Wait. Watch this, and especially to what you just said. So take a look at it. Just look at it, and don't look at the numbers. I want you to look down this kind of column with these dashes and dots up here. That's our district, and every place where there's one of those blue bars, is everybody kind of with me, nudging your neighbor, make sure? That is where we are beat the state in that area, whether it was non-economically disadvantaged, the average, or economically disadvantaged. Goal being to beat them in everything and close the gap. But so what would the red be in the district column? That would be where we did not meet the state average. The state average would typically be a C, just at this point, because it's norm reference at the start. So as you look over that, what would you say? That's a quick way, without looking at any of the numbers. Where is our biggest challenge, or at least this last year?
Math.
Right, and specifically in some grade levels?
Fourth and fifth.
Okay, so it's really easy to see from that point, right? Then you can start digging into the data, and behind this, it spreads out into 10 times as much data to find out exactly where in that math curriculum you had that problem. So since I said that to you, most of you have taken off. I made the green bars for every campus kind of separate from the district. And you notice that Tyler does have the more red. And you can see that coming out. You can see as you look across from district to all 3 campuses and come across who contributed. And it goes up and down. Every campus had certain strengths and certain subjects and certain grade levels. And every campus had certain weaknesses. Some of that's due, to student population sometimes teacher, sometimes the teacher with that subject. You look at a lot of different things, whether you see where you need training there.
Did you, this year they gave the 3-year data. Did you look at that?
Meaning?
3 consecutive years?
Yes, no, I haven't.
Okay.
So they will be judging us. So all of this is 70% of our grade. The other 30% is based on every subpopulation and how they do based on their own standards. By the way, one interesting one to me, I had to write a note for this one. For economically disadvantaged kid to meet a group, to meet the standard and get a point for that group, they only have to get 38. This 38, this average of this 90, 60, 30, they only have to have a 38. But an Asian kid, so if you have 25 Asian kids, that group has to get 82 just to get a point for the Asian subgroup. So a group that has an Asian subgroup may not get the point if their kids aren't making above an 82. Listen, so you see that gap in terms of expectations?
Wow.
The norm for population, we haven't figured out how to get away with that yet.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing that they've got away with it.
Someone's going to challenge that
Every
legally.
sub-pop has its own standard. It's the first time they're kind of admitting it in a sense.
They're basically saying black kids do worse than Hispanic
Exactly.
kids do worse
It is
than
a
white
state
kids
here.
do worse than
This is for the state. This is based on state
You
data.
think the Department of Civil Rights?
somebody. It will.
It's gonna come back.
It's going to come back.
Yeah. But the positive thing that he happened to bring up was that they all,
Compared to whites.
They're
so
BS.
whites,
They beat us?
They're the
yeah,
highest
whites are
Yeah.
only have to make it
Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
Oh, Asians blow,
Blow
and
the top
Asians
off.
also blow away the theory of ECD being a problem.
Because
Because
it doesn't
Asian
matter.
ECDs still score above everyone else. So I know I've run out of time, and but I thought it with that frame.
Finish your statement on the 3
Oh,
years.
okay, thank you. So not only doing the typical subgroups like African American, Hispanic, 2 and plus, we have 2+ races on there. That's a growing group where you're 2 different races or more. There's also going to be a continuously enrolled and a non-continuously enrolled. So they're going to measure every school by who's been there for 3 or more years. That's a nice data piece to have.
Yeah.
And people that have basically just come to you, in other words, they've been here less than that.
And anecdotally, we're just eyeballing data since we've been in operation, and we've had pretty big mobility though. Okay, kids come in elementary are behind, and by the time they leave, they're not.
Sorry.
We'll find out if it's real or if it's
I'm
attrition.
gonna wait for John to give me a
But if
name.
it's real, that's
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's a good data, very good data. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say before everybody leaves, all the board members have to sign the resolution for the name change. So before you leave,
Could you put
make
the
sure you
agenda
sign
back
this
up?
document here that Mayor has.
even though I voted against.
You can mark that you voted against it, but you need to mark that you were here.
Right, it's present, not present.
Well, he needs to mark it as present, but he
Right.
can write off to the side that he opposed.
It was symbolic.
We had one unopposed before and he wrote.
All right, any other questions?
So you-
John?
We have our new teachers coming on Monday, so we'll start training with them. We decided to move it up this year, so we're excited about that, to give them new teacher training and then give them a break and then bring them back. We will have an annual, all of our staff will be here on August the 13th. And so we will be sending an invite out to the board members. If you'd like to come, we're gonna have an annual luncheon. It'd be a great opportunity for us to introduce you, stop by. It's not required, but it will be an opportunity. We'll recognize master teachers. We'll recognize teachers that have been here for several years. Just a kind of a kickoff. That morning there'll be MPD in that afternoon as well. So we'll get you that information. Any other questions? We're excited to start the year and it's busy with everything going on.
Is that it?
It's great.
Is that it? Yeah. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second? Perfect. Everybody agrees. 1:10. It's 1 o'clock.
One